Hello! In this video, I'll show you how I made this velvet dress inspired by this velvet dress from Halara. I'll show you how I analyze, visualize, and design my pattern all just based on a photo of a dress so that you can make your own dresses too. Obviously, a simpler way would be to just find a pattern that's similar to what you'd like to make. But why do things the easy way when we can do things the hard way? When I'm inspired by a piece of clothing, I analyze all the different pieces that it's made of and how they fit together. Looking at this dress, we see a bodice piece with gathers on the bottom to accommodate the bust, a midriff piece, a long sleeve with a sleeve cuff. The sleeve has puffy gathers at the top and the bottom. Then we have a skirt with gathers and a ruffle with gathers, and of course the back bodice. So all in all, we have 7 unique pattern pieces. So now we have a rough idea of the pattern we'll need to make the dress, but how do we actually make the pattern? To make my pattern from scratch, I picked out some stretch velvet fabric. Then I put on a shirt with similar stretch, grabbed some fabric tape, and began taping my pattern pieces onto myself. This is easier if you have someone to help. Basically, we're taping out the shapes that we identified earlier. Then remove your shirt off camera. This is not that kind of channel. I used a pin to poke through my shirt onto my paper to trace my pattern. Pro tip, if you put your yoga mat under your workspace, it's a lot easier to poke the pin through. Then you'll trace over your perforations to reveal your pattern pieces and cut them out. You'll recall the bodice pieces had gathers under the bust, so I extended the bodice piece out so that I'll have extra fabric to gather. Then I traced the bodice back, and I decided to cut across the back to add a yoke, which is the shoulder piece across the back because I think it looks fancy. Then I traced the sleeve hole of a different shirt and extended the top sleeve for gathers. I measured the length I wanted and cut it to size. I also measured my wrist for the cuff pieces, and my bodice pattern pieces were done. At that point, it was time for dinner, and Kiki held my pattern for ransom. I paid her in tuna. I laid my pattern pieces on my fabric, pinned them down, and cut them out. Since the skirt and the ruffle are going to be gathered, I just cut out long strips of the fabric folded over, and you'll just want to measure against the side of your body to know what length you'd like. Here are my bodice front and back, the sleeves and cuffs, and the skirt pieces. And pockets, because of course. And after 10,000 years of pattern making and cutting, it's finally time to sew. I started by doing the gathering stitch on the bodice and sleeves. Just use the longest straight stitch on your machine. Then I gathered the bodice bottom and sandwiched it between 2 midriff pieces. You don't have to do this sandwiching step, but I wanted to for clean inner seams. And here is the bodice front. Then I switched from sandwiches to burritos and tucked the bodice front and back inside my 2 yoke pieces. Then I sewed the shoulder and the back seam and flipped it right sides out. I attached the bodice at the sides, and it was looking good. Kiki came in looking to be entertained, so I turned on some cat TV. Then it was time for the sleeves. First, I sewed the sleeve and cuff closed along the side. I used my gathering stitch to fit the sleeve into the cuff. I hemmed the cuff, and the sleeve was ready to be attached to the bodice. I stuffed the bodice into the sleeve to form a sausage roll. We've got a lot of food comparisons going on here. Then I gathered the sleeve to the size of the armhole and attached them. I moved on to the skirt, attaching the pockets to the skirt front and back, right sides together. Then I attached the skirt front and back. For the ruffle, I attached them right sides together on that short end to create a long loop. I hemmed the bottom and 1,000,000 years later, I pinned the ruffle to the skirt. This time I didn't use a basting stitch to gather the ruffle. Instead, I stretched the skirt panel to the length of the ruffle panel as I sewed. This way, when the skirt fabric has shrunk back down to its regular size, the ruffle has become ruffly. For the top of the skirt, I used elastic slightly smaller than my waist to gather it. I just connected the ends of the elastic and stretched it across the skirt as I sewed. This gave me a stretchy, gathered skirt. I attached the skirt to the bodice, right sides together. But we are not done yet. I hemmed the neckline by folding over once. This was a little tricky with this tight area in the center, and I had to pick it apart several times before giving up and hand stitching. Now we're done, and here's the reveal. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. A question I get asked a lot is, what was the cost? I used about 2¼ yards of fabric, so the fabric cost was $23.60. It took me about 8 hours to design, cut, and sew, but filming pretty much doubles the time it takes to do anything. And if I were to make this dress again, I already have the pattern that I designed, so I can cut out another 30 to 45 minutes. So if I sewed it again, this dress could conceivably take about 3½ hours. So $23.60 of fabric plus 3.5 hours of labor at $40 an hour would put this handmade dress at, drumroll please, $163.60. Or you could buy something similar online for about $40. But where's the fun in that? Now, if I made this dress again, I would do some things differently. I would hem the neckline before adding the midriff piece, as it was really hard to navigate this small area. The pockets add a lot of bulk to the hip area, so I would either make the pockets from a thinner fabric or omit them altogether and just carry a handbag. I would use a smaller piece of elastic on the waist. This velvet is heavy and it caused the elastic to stretch too much in the back. But overall, I love how it turned out and I can't wait to wear it. Thanks for watching. Wake up.